Cash Physical Therapy Headquarters podcast. Let's wait real quick for Facebook to get its life together because it's always a few seconds behind before it can actually go live. And it's so dumb that I have to be in Facebook and or podcasting tool to be able to do this. There we go.
I think the user's just a little slow.
It's debatable. It's debatable. Cool, guys. Super excited to dive into this. Today, we're covering how to prepare to launch a micro clinic. Whether you are a PT student, whether you're a new grad, whether you've been in the game for 10 years and you're just realizing that you were sold a bag of goods that is not going to deliver you the lifestyle that you thought you would have as a physical therapist, this episode is going to be for you. Ben and I are going to cover all the things that we did before we launched our businesses that helped tee us up for success in entrepreneurship. Whether you wanted to just launch a side hustle to supplement your income and give you more leverage and options in life, or you want to completely change the trajectory of your career and your income by launching and going all in on your own cash practice. Today is going to be full of value. Super excited to dive into it. Ben, this was your idea for a topic. Brilliant. Why don't you start us off?
Yeah, big thing is I know this podcast episode is going to be what I wish I would have been able to hear when I just heard about cash-based PT and thinking about whether or not I want to do this someday. And it can be scary and feel like you don't know if you can do it, or like, hey, I just don't know if it's the right time. I need to have my ducks in a row. I need it's kind of just shed light on what the process actually looks like to kind of start your micro practice.
Yeah, because here's the truth. It is incredibly simple. You don't need a business loan. You don't need an MBA. You don't need to be great at business. We are in 2025. All you need is the inspiration to do it, $500 and an internet connection. That is all you need to be able to get started and start making money very, very quickly in this game. And so let's talk about the fear of getting started first. Otherwise, all the stuff that we're going to share is going to just slip through your fingers. So starting in cash practice, it seems big, it seems scary, but anything that is ambiguous, we overcomplicate in our minds. I read a book. Ben, have you read The 48 Laws of Power?
I have, yes. Great book.
That is an incredible book. Some of it's like, oh my God, this is so Game of Thrones. But it is fascinating because it roots everything into real historical events. And it reads like a really, really fun history book. If you love history, you will love this book. But one of the things I just read last night is all about making complex things simple. And the further out they are, the more complex and scary they seem, but the more they get closer, the simpler they become. And the example they used was this parable of camels. And it said the first person that ever saw a camel dropped everything they had and they ran away. The second person to see a camel got a little closer to check it out. The third person that saw a camel put a saddle on its back. And so right now, cash physical therapy seems scary. That's just because you don't have all of the information to realize like how simple this game actually is. And right now, there's so much demand for cash-based services. The cash physical therapy market's exploding. The cash chiro market is exploding. Direct primary care physician market is exploding. And the functional medicine market, that is, I don't even know what's bigger than exploding. That's nuclear. Over the next 10 years, that market is going from like a market cap of 30 billion to 300 billion in the next 10 years. And so now that healthcare is becoming more and more exposed and people are realizing like how messed up it actually is, that you can't be seen when you want to be seen or work on the things that you want to work on. Like I can't get blood work or run tests unless there's already a problem with me. That's messed up. And so the demand for premium personalized one-on-one care is exploding right now. And more people are waking up and they want these services. And so there's never been a better time to be a cash physical therapist. And it doesn't matter how many people are in your market already. There is so much opportunity. You don't need to build a massive clinic to be massively successful. One of our examples, like Ben Wardell, recent client of ours, was in outpatient for 10 years, never actually believed that he could run a cash practice. He thought like, yeah, that's for other people, not for me. I'm not a business person. I'm not an entrepreneur. But he realized that his current career path wouldn't allow him to be the kind of present father that he wanted to be. And so he started a cash practice side hustle out of necessity. And once we kind of showed him the ropes and how to do it, within a year, with less than a year, I'm talking like 6 to 7 months, he's doing $20,000 a month in his practice. He's only working 3 days a week, and he legitimately feels guilty for how much time he's spending with his family, how much time he's going hunting, how much time he gets to relax, and how much money he gets to make, because he's still in this mode where his normal is still what he used to do. And he feels guilty for how much his life has changed in a really, really positive way. But that is the reality that all of you face. You have this opportunity. And Ben, like when you first got started, it wasn't the same. You had a much harder go for getting all this stuff off the ground. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I started my practice. I was moved across the country where I knew nobody. I didn't have any friends and family to lean on. I took a traveling contract in California, originally from Iowa. And so I didn't know what I really needed to do. I didn't know anybody. And it's scary when you don't know anybody and just kind of your own little world. And so it was really difficult from that standpoint. So a lot of times when people are just starting out, they have a leg up on that because they are well known in the community.
Yeah.
People already know them. And so that helps immensely from that standpoint as well. So that was a more challenging thing, was just not knowing anybody and having to start completely from scratch.
Right. And the fact that there's no one in the game who had accomplished what you wanted to accomplish. You knew from the get-go you wanted to build a 7-figure cash practice. No one had done that. Very few people had even built more than a $50,000 a month cash practice. In fact, most of the people still coaching cash physical therapy still have never built a 7-figure cash practice. You had to figure it all out on your own, and you had to go out and learn all of this stuff on your own. So we're gonna peel back the onion. Is that how that phrase goes? Peel back the onion, peel back the layers. I don't know. On what exactly should you be focused on? What should you be learning to not just be confident in your ability to launch cash practice, but how do you properly prepare for all of this stuff? Because here's what I know. If you're listening to this, you are either an already established cash practice, or you're someone who's really, really interested in doing that. And maybe you're feeling guilt and regret for getting your DPT because now you have all this debt, and you feel guilty because now your spouse or your partner is partially responsible for paying off that debt. And you're realizing that the income you're making and how hard you're working does not align with your future financial goals. And you're seeing that, each year you're not really getting the raises that you expected. You're working 10 times harder than you expected with the patient populations you weren't planning on working on or didn't dream of working with. And you're realizing that if you don't make a change, this is going to be your life for the next 30 years. And hopefully you're going to have enough saved up and as a nest egg to be able to retire off of. And that's a really scary place to be. And so you're left with two choices. You can continue to work where you're working and keep doing what you're doing for the next 30 years and hope that works out. You can go and try to find another job, but you're going to quickly realize that they're all pretty much the same. It's not your job, it's the healthcare system. Or you can go all in on yourself and start to bet on yourself and to start to develop the skills that will give you the leverage you need to make the choices you want to make in life. So you can choose who you help, how you help them, and most importantly, when you get to help them. That's where Ben and I land. That's what we want to do. And if that's what you want to do, here's what you got to do. Ben, what's the first thing that they should start studying?
I mean, the first thing is knowing that you can do it. I want to talk more about like the fears around that. It's like the days of having to, invest $100,000 to start a practice is gone. It only took me less than $500 to start my practice. That practice that I initially invested $500 into has generated over $8 million, right? I think it's worth the investment, right? Not saying you have to take it to that level, but it's just so low risk to do it and just get started. So there's so many people that I never thought would be entrepreneurs that have started their practice. You don't need to be an entrepreneur to start your practice. It's never been easier, and anybody can do it.
Right.
Also, it's just like people. We also hear the concerns like, is now the right time. I need to get more years experience, or I'm just not, I need to get my ducks in a row to be able to do this. There's no ducks to get in the row. You just need to, you just need to get liability insurance, find a place to treat out of. You can find a gym. That's it. Treatment table. Those three things is all you need. If you treat within a gym, they already have all the equipment you need. Those are your three ducks. I don't think there's that many ducks to get in a row. So
Right.
you don't need to delay this. I moved out to Oakland, California, where I knew nobody, and within 2 weeks, I was seeing patients, and I had nothing set up when I moved out there. I had a plan. That's one thing too. That to get started, I encourage you guys to binge all these episodes on this podcast. We made this podcast because it's exactly what the podcast that I wish I would have had when I was thinking about starting my cash-based practice. And I was actually in physical therapy school. And so just tried to absorb as much free content as I possibly could. And that was 7 years ago, 8 years ago. There just wasn't a whole lot about cash-based PT out there. And so it was limited. But that's what allowed me to help me really hit the ground running. And so binge this free content. We put more free content out there than anybody else. And it's all the content that I wish I would have had. So absorb all the free stuff and get started there. So that's really how to get started. Is to get started, you don't need to invest in coaching. There's so much free stuff out there that we put out there that you guys can use to get started too.
Right. And realize, like, you have been indoctrinated into a belief system that makes you feel guilty for wanting to take action to help take care of yourself. You've been indoctrinated into thinking that, it's all about serving other people, which it is. But how many people can you serve when you're not taking care of yourself? When we really start to really take care of ourselves, we're able to help more people. So this isn't about making money. This is about creating more leverage to impact more people's lives, and the more people's lives that we transform and change, that is reciprocated and given back to us. And so that's what this is really about. And it's sad because so many people are so fearful of starting their cash practice that personal trainers are providing more rehab services than PTs in some markets, which is absolute lunacy. Okay, because they are learning the skills of entrepreneurship. They're finding what people want and providing solutions for that. And so people who have no business doing any sort of rehab are doing it, and they're charging $100 to $150 to do it because there's not enough physical therapists who are stepping up and putting themselves out there to serve their communities. Even like soccer moms who have nothing to do are taking like weekend warrior courses and calling themselves functional medicine providers. And it's like, there's so much opportunity out there, and the wrong people are getting it that are going to get substantially worse outcomes for these people. We need more physical therapists willing to put themselves out there, start micro clinics, and starting to serve their community. Because the APTA isn't going to change the healthcare system. They're not going to change the public's perception of what physical therapy is. That is on us. That is our responsibility to take things into our own hands and start to deliver world-class treatment to people. And you can do it. I've seen people, like, so many success stories of people who never thought that they would be a success. They never thought that they could run a clinic. But then when they actually got started and they mapped it out, they realized how simple it actually is. You don't need hundreds of patients. You don't need a big team. You can treat patients 3 days a week and make more money than you ever thought, while actually changing people's lives and having the impact that you want to have. It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
So if this is something that you're sold on doing and you want to get started, maybe it's not right now, but you want to start preparing and learning for this stuff. As Ben said, listen to our content, go to our YouTube channel, Cash Physical Therapy School, listen to our podcast, go through our Instagram content. But the place where I'd recommend is start learning about sales. I think that is the number one most important thing to understand. Now, cash physical therapy isn't really all about sales. Okay. If you're smart, you're designing experiences that sell themselves so that you don't have to be a salesperson. But understanding human psychology, on why people buy, on what value actually is, what price actually means, what money really is, these are all really important mindset things that we need to understand so that we know how to communicate effectively to people. Because if we're going to educate the masses on what physical therapy really is and can be, and guide people and lead people to living happier, healthier, more active lives where they can be independent when they're old, so that their kids don't have to take care of them like we're taking care of our parents. Well, then we're going to need leaders. And in order to be a leader, we need to be able to effectively communicate. And so there's a lot of resources out there for learning about human psychology, learning about like sales and all that stuff. Ben, what are some of the books that you checked out?
Yeah, so there to sell is healthy. There's a lot. Mainly it was sales and sales books, and
Yeah.
also mindset books. The Magic of Thinking Big was a big one
Mm.
that I read. It
Rich
really,
Dad, Poor Dad.
yeah,
That's
Rich Dad Poor Dad was a good one too. And the Charisma Myth that just talks about like body language and essentially how to get people to trust you and like you. Um,
right.
and and uh, and that's really impactful during the in-person evaluation. So
Right.
those were a few ones that I really started and resonated with for sure.
What was the body language one? Because I think that is so incredibly important, because in order to sell cash physical therapy, like that is more of an emotional sell than a logical sell. Okay, because you'll use it, paying cash for what you pay a high copay for is never going to be more logical. It's always going to be more logical to use insurance. And so
Mhm.
people invest in cash because of the emotional reasons behind the investment, because they're not in cash. We're not selling pain relief. We're selling transformations, the accomplishment of goals, a better future, empowering them to be able to manage their own health and prevent future injuries. That's what's being sold. And so understanding the body language and how to nail the subjective assessment, that is the key to winning people over and having them truly understand what's the difference between what you're doing and what other people are doing at typical in-network clinics.
Yeah,
So I think
yeah,
that book would be uh, um, a huge win for folks. But if you hate sales, like I know you do, I would recommend reading the book, The Go Giver. That is a really, really good one, because all of you, you're givers. You're not takers. That's why it's uncomfortable to talk about money. It's uncomfortable to talk about sales. It's uncomfortable to charge people for your services because you're a giver. But that book does a really good job of illustrating that in order to give, we have to be able to receive, because we can only give equal to the amount that we receive. So the more we receive, the more we can give. And that's a really good book to help make you feel and comfortable and ethical, make it, feel more ethical and safe in your mind to ask to receive, and open that up in your mind, because we're not very good at receiving if you're a giver. The other book is How to Make One Hell of a Profit and Still Get into Heaven. That's going to shift so many paradigms in your head around what sales actually is, how to do it ethically, how to feel really, really good about charging what you need to charge, and make sure that you're delivering on something that's actually world class, that is worth even more than you're actually charging. So we just gave like 5 books. So get an Audible account and listen to that on your way to work. Stop listening to music. Stop, when you're at the gym, when you're driving to work, when you're on your lunch break. This is the stuff that you should be listening to. And yes, like that's your break time, that's your you time. But it's like, if you want to change your life, you have to start being willing to sacrifice in the short term for the long term gain.
mhm. Yeah, and I think that's the thing too. A lot of people are scared to start because of the perceived risk
Yeah.
associated with it. There's really no, we just dismiss the financial risk, but there's also the other side of the risk of not getting started. Like if I would have waited 5 years, I've been out of school for now almost 7 years now, almost 7 years. And, if I would have waited 5 years to get started, I'd be $8 million short of where I am
Mhm.
now if I wouldn't have got started. Right. And there's a risk. And I paid off my student loans within 2 years of graduating because I started my practice. If I
Right.
would have waited, I would not only have $8 million short of what I do now, I would also still have $150,000 in debt. So the
Right.
only reason I was able to pay that off is because I started my cash-based practice. It's a
Yeah.
bigger, much greater risk to not get started than it is to get started,
Totally.
especially with how easy it is now.
Right. The opportunity cost. If you just follow the exact steps that Ben and I talk about every single week, every day in our content, the opportunity risk of not listening to that advice is $7 million. Because if you just did exactly what Ben did, you could do that. It's just most people aren't willing to do that or have the discipline to do the things that they promised themselves that they were going to do. What's the opportunity cost of starting a cash practice? Let's say even if you lose your job, okay, you're still risking less than $1 million over a lifetime.
You're risking your shitty mill job. That's a huge risk.
Right. As if you can't go and find another job that's even better. The demand for physical therapists is huge. Vacancy rates go up every single year. Okay. You could go all in on your cash practice, roll the dice for a year, 2 years. And as long as you're keeping up with your license, like you're still going to have a job. You can always go back and find another job. There's no shortage of opportunities for jobs for PTs. So if you just do the math that way and you're willing to just fail and have some setbacks and not get deterred by the social pressures of going out and trying to do your own thing and maybe living more frugally for a little bit, it's like that. I'll take that every single time. I'll start over 20 times because I'm young. I can afford to start over a bunch of times right now. So it's, the best time to start how does that expression go? I'm just butchering the expressions today. It's like the best time to plant an oak tree was yesterday. I think that's how it goes.
Yes. And the next best time is now.
Right. And even if you learn these skills and don't end up starting your cash practice, what did you just do to the value that you can provide to a business? You've learned about sales, you've learned about business, you've learned about marketing, you've learned about finance, you've learned about operations, even if you never start a practice. You think that's going to benefit your life down the line? If you have all the information that Ben and I started out with, extrapolate that over the next 10, 20 years. Your life is going to be completely different. So stop thinking personal development is for losers, because that is the dumbest, most loser thing I've ever heard for people that think that. It's crazy. I remember my brothers, one New Year's, we're all together. And I was talking about how every New Year's I journal, I reflect on the entire year, I say what I want to do better this year. And they asked oh yeah, what do you write about? And I'm like, well, for the last 6 years, I wrote down that I want to be more disciplined. And they made fun of me. They made fun of personal development and self-help books, all that stuff, because it's and you're still trying to be more disciplined after all of that. It's like, I'm more disciplined than compared to when I started. I am 10 times more disciplined. I've built a multi-million-dollar business. I've transformed other people's lives. I've contributed in helping other people become millionaires. It's I write down I want to be more disciplined every year, but I'm astronomically further than I was the first time I wrote that. And it's a lot of people think that way. And it's it's crazy. Incremental effort over time, how it compounds is insane. And so start leaning into that. Start learning now. Stop wasting time on being a consumer of content. Start being a creator. Stop wasting time listening to music. Learn. And then when you can't learn anymore, then listen to music.
Yeah, there's a difference between risk and calculated risk. That's a big lesson in this podcast is there's a difference between risk and calculated risk.
Yeah.
This is a calculated risk with hundreds, thousands of other people just like you that have already done it and been successful.
Right. Let's talk about the risk that you took when you took out a $200,000 student loan.
That is not, and that's the thing is that's not even a calculated risk. That is a risk.
That's a risk.
From a strictly a financial standpoint, it does not make sense to invest $150,000, $200,000 in a doctoral degree that dishes you out $100,000 a year if you're lucky. It doesn't make sense. So you've already made that risk, and that was a wrong risk. To be completely blunt, it's from a strictly financial situation. That was the wrong decision. I made it with you guys, and so if you're willing to invest $150,000, $200,000 to make $100,000, you can invest $500 to potentially profit millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars. So
100%. And one of my philosophies that kind of has driven me that I bet is written in a lot of gyms, you maybe read it in some of your textbooks, it aligns with physical therapy really well. Socrates said, "No man has the right to be an amateur in the matter of physical strength. It is a shame for a man to grow old without seeing the beauty and strength of which a body is capable." Okay. I think all physical therapists would agree with Socrates' statement there. I would take this a step further where it is an absolute shame if people live their lives just allowing life to happen to them and never developing the skills or the character to start to work on themselves to realize their greatest potential. To me, there's no greater fear in my entire life than being on my deathbed, knowing that I had so much more to give, but I never took the action to actually see what I was capable of. And that's what I charge all of you listening to do. Start thinking about what would happen if I played all out, if I went as big as I could, and I didn't allow fear to control my daily actions, fear of what other people would think, fear of what if this doesn't work, all of the buts, what ifs. Cut that shit out. Do it anyway. See who you become, because through failure creates growth. You can't grow without failure, just like how we build muscle. And every single time you fail, the version of yourself that you become becomes stronger, more resilient. And so if you're afraid, good, do it. That is the exact signal that this is something that you should do, because that's going to turn you into a stronger, better version of yourself. Can I go on a little tangent quick, Ben?
Yeah, good.
Like everyone says, like the common quote that some people say, it's like you're you're willing to do anything for your kids, but are you willing to be healthy? Okay, I think that it's something that we use for our patients to help them to invest in their health and to shift their thinking around it. Okay, another way of spinning that is like everyone wants their kids to pursue their dreams and become all that they can. Okay. And so people think that they put their nose down, they work really, really hard in a job so that they can make enough money so that their kids don't have to want for things, so that they have all the opportunity that they want to do. Would it not be way better and a better example for your kids to create the opportunity for them to do that if you do that? If you actually go all out to chase and pursue your dreams? Because if you don't, what are the chances that your kid is going to be constrained and confined to that same fear that you had? But if you go out, you face that fear, you do the hard thing, and then give them a roadmap for how to conquer your fears, to live fearlessly, and to take massive action and be disciplined in the things that you do each day, what are the chances that your kids will then go on to pursue their dreams? Versus if you keep doing what you're doing, they're going to model what you do. And so it's our responsibilities as parents, as individuals, as healthcare providers to become the absolute best that we can be. Because by doing so, it unconsciously gives permission to everyone around us to do the same. We lift up everyone around us. And if that doesn't light you up, if that doesn't inspire you, then yeah, maybe going into entrepreneurship and starting your own thing isn't the right move, because it isn't for everyone, and that's okay.
Yeah, if what Jordan just said doesn't light you up, that's your if you've been on the fence of like, hey, should I do this or not, and you didn't get lit up by that, I would tell you flat out, don't do it. It's just that it's that simple.
Right. Because there's a lot of really good jobs at cash physical therapy practices. They need excellent clinicians that don't want to do all this, because it is hard.
Yep.
So easier than people think, but mentally it's simple. It's hard because of our minds. Okay. Because we have to constantly be faced with our own limitations and overcome those limitations through failure. And so it's mentally taxing, but the art of building a successful business is really, really simple.
Yep.
So we went on a bit of a tangent there, Ben. But aside from learning about psychology and sales and body language and persuasion and leadership, what are some of the other things that PT students or PTs who are planning their escape, what are some other things that they should start learning?
I mean, those are really the big ones. If you do those, you're gonna be very successful. You should do those consistently, and it just really comes down to mindset. And go back to what you said, Jordan, about by you being able to level up, you're able to level others around you up, and like your kids, like generational wealth isn't passed down through money; it's passed down through knowledge. And so by you being able to level yourself up, that's stuff that is going to impact your generation, your generational wealth per se for generations, right? And not through money. So by investing you're investing in your lineage for generations. And so, but yeah, I mean, outside of that, like there's so many things that could be helpful, but really just mindset, understanding that you can do this, and sales psychology, and wrapping your head around that. Hey, money is just a tool.
Yeah.
It can be done. It can be used to do good. It can be used to do bad. If you have more money in your hands, do you think that it's going to be a good thing or a bad thing? Right? What can you do with that as a tool? So really, just consuming all the content is really what it comes down to.
I love it. So that's we mentioned a few books. If we could distill that down to the top 3 books that they should listen to help get them started and moving in the right direction. I would say Rich Dad Poor Dad is probably the biggest paradigm shift I think a lot of people need.
Yep.
What would you say is a good number 2?
It can be either. These are kind of overlapping books. 10x, probably 10x. I would say maybe that's an even better book than The Magic Thinking Big. It's very similar. It's just like, I would say probably 10x by Grant Cardone would be number 2. For me, that was a big shifting.
Yeah, that's a really good one. Or be your future self now. How would you compare that to 10x is easier than 2x, at least for a beginner?
10x is a little bit more. It's more aggressive.
Yeah.
It's just no BS. And so the other one is a little bit softer. So it depends on your personality. For me, I like the 10x better, but talk about what that other book was about mainly.
Yeah, if you're type A like Ben, 10x is easier than 2x. If you're more of an emotionally driven person like me, become your future self now. It sounds so cheesy. That's why I didn't read it at first, but that's one of the greatest books I've ever read, hands down. Another one, the last one that I would say to help warm you up to the idea of sales and what it really is and feel good and comfortable doing it, I would read How to Make One Hell of a Profit and Still Get into Heaven. That's a really good intro to sales and feeling comfortable with what it really is. So I would check those out. So thanks for listening, everybody. Hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your week. Thanks for listening to the Cash